Good evening again, Mrs. Byer. I'm going to be performing for you my informative speech. Keep in mind that when I wrote this, it was just after the first debate that we had in September, so the questions I'm going to ask you are a bit dated, but the information still stands the same. So moving on, my the purpose of my informative speech this evening is to inform you how to register to vote in New Jersey and to inform you of the upcoming deadline of when the last day to register to vote is. Did you watch the only two debates that we had this year, Mrs. Byer, in September and October? And are you registered to vote? Politics, especially in recent years, has become a very controversial topic to bring up, especially since it incites many violent and racial behaviors within people. But I feel like everyone should be informed of how to go about getting registered to vote in order to exercise that right. According to Penn State University Libraries, in 2016, 138 million people came out to vote. This is only 58.1% of the voting eligible population that voted. This speech is to inform you how to register to vote in New Jersey because it is important to know how to do so in order to engage in civic activity. I will be explaining the process of how to register to vote, when you can register to vote, and what to expect on election day. First and foremost, in order to go about voting, you must first go to vote.org, then fill out your credentials, have state issued ID on hand, and lastly, pick a political party. You cannot vote as an independent on election day in New Jersey. Once a party is picked, you are affiliated with that party until you decide to switch it. The last day to register to vote in New Jersey is was October 13th of 2020. As a side note, I would like to mention that if you decide to change your political party, it must be done 55 days before a primary election. And another side note I'd like to point out is you can register to vote at 17. However, you cannot officially cast a vote to vote until you are 18. Moving on to my second point, in order to vote in New Jersey, you must be a U.S. citizen. You must live at a New Jersey address. You must be 18 years old at the time of the election. Excuse me. You must also not be serving a sentence, including parole or for a felony conviction. You must not be deprived of the right to vote for a criminal conviction under New Jersey election law, unless pardoned or have the right to vote restored. You must also not be judged by a court to lack the capacity to understand the act of voting. Moving on, well, as another side note, I'd also like to say if you register to vote by mail on the day of election, you must provide a voter ID number. Also, if you sign up to vote by mail, you can only vote by mail. So if you go to an actual polling location, they will look your name up in a book and they will say, "Sorry, you're registered to vote as a mail-in ballot." So they will just turn you away, or they'll give you a provisional, which is a paper ballot. Moving on to my next and last point, I'd like to say on election day, you never ever have to provide ID in the state of New Jersey. I know some states, and mostly southern states, um, make certain groups of people provide their state issued ID, but that's not the case in New Jersey. Election day was November 3rd, 2020. Elections always seemingly fall on a Tuesday, for whatever reason. Polls were open at 6 a.m. and they remain open all day until 8 o'clock at night. And don't worry, Just because it hits 8 o'clock doesn't mean that they automatically close the polling booth. If there's a line of people outside, they will remain open until that last person has cast their vote. In conclusion, going about getting registered to vote is a simple process. Go on vote.org, fill out your credentials, have state ID. When you're doing all of this, choose a political party, and boom, you're done. As we saw from Tuesday night's election in September, this year's presidential election is going to be another contentious one, just like 2016's election. If you would like your candidate to win, I urge you to go out and get registered to vote in order to make that happen for them. If you are already registered to vote, then pass the information along to someone who could use it. Thank you for listening to my speech. And I would like to say for the record, I am at 6 minutes and 11 seconds.